Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today what I have for you guys is a tournament of the best college football teams from the 2010s decade. It's a 32 team bracket, and I seeded the teams 1 to 16 on each side, just like the NCAA tournament. It's basically the round of 32, and let's get it started here with the first matchup. We have the 2019 LSU Tigers versus 2018 Notre Dame. This one was a blowout, 51-17. And the way that I'm simulating these games, I'm using What If Sports. For those of you that are familiar, What If Sports is a college football simulator. You can choose any team from any year. You can choose the playbook, organize the depth chart. You can do anything you want to make it the way it was. And I made these as realistic as possible. The playbooks, depth chart, everything to fit the play style that the teams had from when they played. And I also made sure that the right players were in the right spots. A lot of the times when I have done this before, like just for fun, a lot of times like tight ends would be on the O-line and stuff like that. So I made sure everything was right there. And as you can see, LSU laid the hammer on 2018 Notre Dame, 51-17. Joe Burrow, he threw for 329 yards, 5 touchdowns. And then on the other side, Ian Book, 186 yards and just 1 touchdown. So LSU, they're moving on. Next matchup, we have 2018 Alabama versus 2013 Auburn. Both these teams made it to the national championship game, and both of them lost. Alabama, they lost in a blowout to Clemson. Auburn, they lost to Florida State. And 2013 Florida State, that's the team that I'm picking to win this. Before I start, I just want to say I think 2013 Florida State has a good shot at winning this. Obviously, 2019 LSU is going to be hard to beat. 2018 Clemson is going to be really hard. Other than that, I think 2013 Florida State can get it done. So that's my pick heading into this tournament. But back to this matchup. Alabama, they won 26-13. Tua, he went 17 for 29, 273 yards, a touchdown, and 1 pick. Nick Marshall did not throw the ball a lot. This Auburn team, they ran a bunch back in the SEC championship game in 2013 against Missouri. Auburn, they ran all over them. They rarely passed the football. Trey Mason, 167 yards in this game. Just wasn't enough as the Tigers fall by 13 to Alabama. Next matchup, 2015 Alabama versus 2014 Florida State. One of these teams won the championship, Alabama, led by Derrick Henry. 2014 Florida State, they made the college football playoff and lost by 39 in the semifinal to Oregon. Alabama, they smoked them in this game, 44-14. And after watching that playoff game, we can't really be surprised by this. Derrick Henry, 36 carries, 210 yards. That's pretty realistic. On the other side, Dalvin Cook, he had a pretty good game, 160 yards rushing with a long of 73. Jameis Winston, he threw a touchdown, but also had an interception. And Jake Coker did a good job controlling the ball. 2 touchdowns and over 200 yards passing as Alabama moves on. And they'll be playing the winner of 2016 Clemson and 2013 Ohio State. 2016 Clemson, they are national champions. 2013 Ohio State, they were a game away from making the Natty and playing Florida State, but they lost to Michigan State in the Big Ten Championship. Clemson, they take the win here 26-20. Deshaun Watson, 263 passing yards and a touchdown. Braxton Miller, 6 of 14, 85 yards passing, but he also ran 19 times for 34 yards. Carlos Hyde had himself a day, 22 carries, 141 yards. But Clemson's moving on to play Alabama. The next matchup, 2012 Alabama, 2014 Oregon. 2 teams that made the Natty. Alabama, they beat Notre Dame. Oregon, they lost to Ohio State. In this game, we had a classic. This game went to overtime. And in overtime, Oregon decided to take the 3. Alabama ended up winning, getting a touchdown. Eddie Lacy, 22 carries, 78 yards. Yeldon also ran 16 times for 87. Mariota, remember he won the Heisman this year, 315 yards passing. So really both teams moved the ball a lot. And looking at the team stats, Alabama ran 62 times, which is crazy. So they really controlled the ball here, even though Oregon had more time of possession. That doesn't really add up, but I guess if you don't convert a lot of third downs, Alabama, they went just under 50%, just over 50% on third down. So I don't know, 62 carries though, that's a lot. A.J. McCarron, 14 of 18, 183 yards and a touchdown. Alabama's moving on, and they're going to be playing the winner of 2010 Auburn and 2017 Oklahoma. On to that game, we had an absolute classic here between two Heisman Trophy quarterbacks. Cam Newton didn't have quite the cast that Baker Mayfield had. Baker Mayfield and Oklahoma, they end up taking the win here. Mayfield threw for almost 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. Cam threw for 155 and also ran for another 80. Overall, Oklahoma, Auburn, this game was a shootout, and the Sooners are moving on to play Alabama. Next game, 2016 Alabama, 2010 Oregon. 2 games ago, we just had Oregon, Alabama, another Oregon, Alabama here. And this one also sees Alabama winning 26-6 against the undefeated Ducks. Both these teams were undefeated. Michael James, the running back, finished top 3 in the Heisman. He didn't have over 100 yards in this game, only 97. Darren Thomas, much like the championship game against Auburn, really struggled. No touchdowns and an interception. Damian Harris, 84 yards rushing. And just like the other game when Alabama played the Ducks, they ran for 52 yards in this one. And ultimately, they're moving on. And they're going to be playing the winner of 2014 Ohio State and 2010 TCU. Our first upset here. I'd say this is a pretty big upset. Even though TCU, they did go undefeated. This is probably one of the better teams to not get a shot at a national championship in the history of college football. If there was a playoff, them and Boise State would have been in the playoff with Oregon and Auburn in 2010, so they both would have had a shot. No playoff, though. TCU went undefeated, and they're also moving on in this tournament. They beat 2014 Ohio State by a score of 45-37. Andy Dalton, 303 yards and 3 touchdowns. Really looking at the box score, TCU did not stop Ohio State whatsoever. It's just they outscored them. Ohio State had 200-yard rushers. JT also threw for 220 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. So really, there's no defense in this game. And TCU is moving on. They're going to be taking on 2016 Alabama in the second round. Next up, 2018 Clemson, 2012 Oregon. The Tigers are going to get the victory here, 43-20. Another blowout by a top team playing Oregon. Oregon's 0-3 now, I think, in this. Yep, 0-3. Trevor Lawrence, 13-25, 2 touchdowns through the air. Travis Etienne, oh my gosh. I thought I was reading this wrong, but 222 yards on just 19 carries. That's why I kind of paused. I didn't think I was reading that correct. Yeah, Travis Etienne, he had a huge game. Kenyon Barner, 24 carries, 146 yards. Oregon had a 17-point second quarter, and I see a punt return touchdown by DeAnthony Thomas in there. That's interesting, but nonetheless, Tigers win by 23, and they're moving on. Next up, we have 2015 Clemson and 2012 Ohio State. Remember, the winner of this will be playing 2018 Clemson, and it looks like it's going to be the Tigers, 30-28. Another classic game here. Ohio State in 2012, remember they went undefeated, but due to probation, they couldn't go to a bowl game or the national championship. In this, they lose by 2 points. Let's see, Carlos Hyde, once again in this, he had a huge game, 161 yards. Braxton Miller threw for 121 and 1 touchdown. Deshaun Watson, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, 20 of 27. So he put on a show. And then the second round, we're going to have an all-Clemson battle. 2015 Tigers versus the 2018 Tigers. Deshaun Watson versus Trevor Lawrence. That should be pretty exciting. Next matchup, 2017 Bama, 2014 TCU. This is the TCU team that got left out of the playoff just to beat Ole Miss in their bowl game, like 63-7. Absolutely ridiculous, led by Trayvon Boykin. But in this, they lose to Alabama, 45-27. Trayvon Boykin had 322 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Jalen Hurts, 155 through the air, also ran for 63 as the Tide move on. 2018 Oklahoma, 2011 LSU. Whoa, this is an upset. I'd say this is probably the second biggest upset of the tournament so far, behind TCU beating Ohio State. Oklahoma, they take down one of the best defenses of the decade. They dropped 38 on them nonetheless. Just like in the Rose Bowl against a really good defense. Lincoln Riley, Baker Mayfield. dropped a lot of points here. Or Kyler Murray, sorry, not Baker Mayfield. Kyler Murray, 19 to 24, 288 yards, 2 touchdowns. Wow. This is honestly surprising to me. I thought 2011 LSU was going to win this game, and I thought they would have a really good shot at moving on. But yeah, CeeDee Lamb, 97 yards receiving. Trey Sermon, 97 yards rushing. Jordan Jefferson for LSU, 14 of 29. That's never going to get it done, being below 50%. Only 200 passing yards. But yeah, Oklahoma's moving on. They're going to be playing 2017 Alabama. Next up, 2011 Alabama, 2011 Boise State. Senior Kellen Moore versus probably the best overall defense of the decade. In 2011, Alabama only allowed 109 points all season long. And they are taking the victory here by 7 points over the Broncos. Doug Martin did run for 100 yards, though. And Kellen Moore threw it 61 times in this game. 41 of 61, 410 yards and 2 touchdowns against a very good defense. But they only had 20 points to show for it, and that's really what this game came down to. Eddie Lacy, 20 carries, 154 yards. Sorry, Trent Richardson, 20 carries, 154 yards. Eddie Lacy, 6 carries, 42 yards. Overall, this is a pretty good game here, but like every other one, Alabama is moving on, and they'll be taking on the winner of 2012 Georgia, 2019 Ohio State, and it's looking like it's going to be the Buckeyes by a score of 34-19. Todd Gurley ran 21 times for 95 yards in this game, but Ohio State, remember this Ohio State team, they were undefeated going into the playoff. That really good, probably now the third or fourth best playoff game that we've seen. In the Fiesta Bowl against Clemson, 2 undefeated teams, came down to the last play of the game. 2019 Ohio State, forgotten team, Chase Young, Justin Fields, a lot of really good players on both sides of the ball. J.K. Dobbins, he ran for 133 yards in this game. Fields threw for 232 and 2 touchdowns as Ohio State moves on to take on Alabama. Our second to last matchup in the first round, 2017 Georgia and 2012 Notre Dame, 2 teams that went to the playoff, or not the playoff, the national championship, and both lost. Looking to move on to the second round here. 2012 Notre Dame is going to ease out a victory here, and I'm going to call this an upset just because of what happened in real life when both these teams lined up against Alabama. One team lost in overtime, the other lost in the first quarter. But yeah, Notre Dame, they're moving on here. Everett Golson, 18 for 25, 262 yards and a touchdown. Jake Fromm, 14 of 23, 171 yards through the air. Theo Riddick, 23 attempts, 125 yards on the ground. Tyler Eifert, main target, 4 catches, 59 yards for the Irish. As they're moving on, and they're going to be taking on 2013 Florida State, 2014 Alabama. And this one was a classic as well. 34-31. What a game we had here. 2013 Florida State eased out the victory. So the winner that I chose, they almost lost in the first round. That is kind of nerve-wracking. They could have very well lost this game. Alabama, they did score with 41 seconds left. So I guess Florida State was up 10 with 40 seconds left before Alabama scored. But still, that's only a 3-point victory. Alabama, Amari Cooper, he had 142 yards receiving. Blake Sims threw for 350 yards, but no touchdowns and 2 picks. Blake Sims throwing for 350 yards on this defense has me concerned moving forward in the tournament. But yeah, this Florida State defense, I picked them because of the defense and the fact that Jameis Winston, he did win the Heisman this year. Nonetheless, they're moving on, playing 2012 Notre Dame in the second round. And that's going to wrap up today's video. Part 1, first round. The next part 2, will be the rest of the tournament. So yeah, guys, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in part 2.